and the House is about to begin. We'll now turn you over to the Speaker of the House.
Honorable members, when the House last rose, we were on the item motions. Honorable Prime Minister. Honorable Prime Minister, Leader of Government Business.
Madam Speaker, I beg to lay the following motion standing in my name.
Yes, go ahead, read the motion.
Whereas it is provided by Section 441(1) of the Finance Administration Act, Cap 1501, that a guarantee involving a financial liability is not binding on government unless the Minister of Finance grants or guarantee it in accordance with the enactment or with the prior approval of Parliament by resolution of Parliament. And whereas it is further provided by Section 42(1) of the Finance Administration Act, Cap 1501, that they shall be charged on and paid out of the consolidated fund debt charges for which the government is liable. And whereas the Minister of Finance considers it necessary to guarantee the amount not exceeding $15,804,355.01 to secure a payment contract awarded to Fresh Start Construction Company Limited for the purpose of financing the Miku Road Rehabilitation Project, Duga to Dereso Road Rehabilitation Project. And whereas the interest is payable at a rate of 6.5% per annum on the reducing balance, the payment period is for 4 years commencing from the first day of September 2017, and the payment amount is payable in equally quarterly installments from the 5th quarter of 3 months from the issuance of the takeover certificate, whichever is later. Be it resolved that the Parliament authorizes the Minister of Finance to guarantee of amount not exceeding EC $15,804,355.01 to secure a payment contract awarded to Fresh Start Construction Company Limited for the purpose of financing the Miku Road Rehabilitation Project and Duga to Dereso Road Rehabilitation Works. Be it further resolved that the interest is payable at a rate of 6.5% per annum on the reducing balance. The payment period is for 4 years commencing from the first day of September 2017, and the payment amount is payable in equal quarterly installments from the 5th quarter of the 3 months from the issuance of the takeover certificate, whichever is later. Madam Speaker, in accordance with the Standing Orders Section 31, I would like to withdraw this motion at this time.
Honorable members, I have to put the question before the House in accordance with Standing Order 31. The question is that this motion be withdrawn from the Standing Order. Honorable Member for Beaufort South.
Madam Speaker, I rise just to seek your direction. The motion was read into the record, and this is highly unusual. So the normal procedure would have been that the mover of the motion would have signaled before reading the motion into the record that the motion is not being pursued at this time. So let me get your direction, because if the motion has been read into the record, then it ought to become a subject of debate. So perhaps we can have your direction to avoid any potential confusion.
Honourable Member, I reference Standing Order 30, subsection 1, and the Honourable Prime Minister sought my guidance as to, because he indicated beforehand that he would like to withdraw. Since Standing Order 31 provides, and I quote, "A motion may be withdrawn by leave of the House or committee, as the case may be, if after it has been moved and before the question is fully put, thereupon the mover so requests." So, based on that provision, the Standing Order 30 sub 1, the Prime Minister is actually within reason to withdraw at this time. So, honourable members, the question is that motion number 2 on your order paper be withdrawn at this moment. I now put the question. As many as of that opinion say aye. Aye. As many as of a contrary opinion say no. No. The ayes have it. The motion leave is granted, so that the motion is withdrawn from the order paper at this moment. Honourable Member for Castries South.
Madam Speaker, I beg to move the following motion standing in my name. Whereas it is provided by Section 40, subsection 1 of the Citizenship by Investment Act for the Minister of Responsibility for the Citizenship by Investment Program, following approval by the Cabinet of Ministers to effect certain changes to the Act, Section 40, subsection 3 requires that such changes be subject to a negative resolution. And whereas the changes to the regulations were announced on 5th January 2017 to become effective on 1st January 2017, and whereas Statutory Instrument 2017, 2017, number 1, was tabled in the House of Assembly on 7th February 2017, be it resolved that Parliament by negative resolution approve the Regulation 73A and Regulation 79 and Schedule 2.1 qualifying investments as provided by Statutory Instrument 2015 number 89 be reinstated.
Honourable members, the question is that Parliament by negative resolution approve that Regulation 7 sub 3A and Regulation 7 sub 9 and Schedule 2 sub 1 qualifying investments as provided by the statutory instrument 2015 number 9089 be reinstated. Honourable Member for Castries South.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the resolution asks that the changes which were announced on the 5th of January and which were brought before this House on the 7th of February 2017 be reinstated. I think there's a deeper problem because this was the same. Madam Speaker, this evening, Madam Speaker, you heard me? Yeah. We need to take a journey as to why is it this side is asking that the changes which were announced by the government need to be reinstated. Madam Speaker, how did we get to be here? The SIP administration decided after much soul searching that the international investment climate had changed to the point where small island states like ours, in a troubling international business environment, had become disadvantageous in attracting foreign direct investment. We observed that many countries, from the United States to Ireland, to Portugal, to Malta, to St. Kitts, had decided to use residency and citizenship as leverage to attract investment. The SLP administration was acutely aware that this was a highly sensitive matter. It was not one to be taken lightly. But the reality was facing us, and we had to make a decision. There are those people, Madam Speaker, who have the comfort of a monthly salary and can criticize. But all genuine politicians on both sides of the House will always care about those who do not have. And as we reflect, Madam Speaker, we accepted that we needed more investment in the country. That since 2006, and with the advent of the world crisis of 2008, there was a decline of investment. In 2006, St. Lucia recorded the highest levels of investment in its history. We recognized that we wanted to expand our bed stock, and therefore we needed to attract more hotels to St. Lucia. So, Madam Speaker, when you hear some of the talk now about the need to increase bed stock in St. Lucia, it is not new. Successive governments have said so, and successive governments have tried different programs to do so. We felt the Citizenship by Investment program can attract more investment in the hospitality sector. Madam Speaker, we needed more revenue to spend on schools, on our hospitals, on housing, and on business development. But Madam Speaker, it was a difficult decision. One of many difficult decisions that had to be taken by the SLP administration. And we all remember the introduction of that, a decision that was delayed for many years because there was a fear of the consequences. In fact, Madam Speaker, an office was already open with staffing, but the VAT was not introduced because there was a fear of the consequences. And when the former Prime Minister and member for Beaufort South had to sit and consider the introduction of a CIP program, it was a difficult decision for him. And I'm sure, Madam Speaker, he will in his own words explain to you how difficult it was and how he had to be persuaded to agree to implement such a program in St. Lucia. Because, Madam Speaker, there was always the fear that if such a program falls in the hands of the wrong politicians, it could be very harmful to the country. And that's exactly, Madam Speaker, what has happened. But, Madam Speaker, whilst we were debating whether we should do it, and Madam Speaker, there are some people that would say to you that Labour Party is at fault because they introduced it, so all the problems that have been created now by this present government, we introduced it in the first place. That's a faulty argument, Madam Speaker, although one can understand why it is expressed. It's like saying you in a kitchen, a man and a woman, and the man is always cutting his hand, but they need to buy a chopping knife. And when it is bought and he chops his finger off, he says his wife is at fault because she bought the knife, not that he was careless in its use. So the program had to be introduced, Madam Speaker. And we are aware that there were previous there were discussions with the previous United Workers' Party administration to introduce such a program in St. Lucia. And one of the global partners actually said to me that they had been promised the program by the previous UWP administration and to be the sole operator of that program. The Prime Minister and myself had discussions. I met him when I was High Commissioner in London at a real estate cocktail hosted by his sister. And he was making the point that we are delaying and we're too slow introducing the CIP program. And he and I had an exchange about it. And he said other things to me which I don't think is appropriate to repeat in this House, Madam Speaker. Not that they were anything bad or terrible, just that the conversation is not necessary at this point. But that reinforced the view that we should have had a program, and if the United Workers' Party was in power, they would have had a program. And therefore, Madam Speaker, the responsibility was on us, was on the SLP administration, to implement a program with all the necessary safeguards, with all the necessary constraints, to ensure that it is not a program that can be abused. But, Madam Speaker, no one thought that the government could have been as rogue as this present government is, and so indiscreet in its conduct and the handling of the government affairs. But, Madam Speaker, why did we introduce such a program? Because in our view, Madam Speaker, monies earned from donations under the CIP could be used to repair schools, finance the operations of the new hospitals, build new roads, build playing fields, and provide for youth. Money earned under the bonds would help offset the cost of borrowing as we were plagued with high interest rates. The real estate provisions would be used to substantially increase our tourism bed stock and create growth in our construction sector, providing jobs for thousands of young people in this country. In fact, Madam Speaker, there were already advanced discussions with 4 investors relating to new hotels. The same hotels that have been boasted about today were all initiated under the SLP administration. And I do not need to repeat the hotels. We've been through that before, Madam Speaker. And they were first attracted through the CIP program, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, whilst on the subject of hotels, I just needed to point out that last year, September last year, the chairman of the CIP announced that Cabinet had approved another CIP project, the 4-bay development. But that has never been mentioned publicly by the other side. It was not mentioned in the budget statement. It was not mentioned in any of the public announcements made, Madam Speaker. And that's a project that we had started discussions with. An investor from Scotland, I think is where he's based. You might be familiar with it, Madam Speaker. And I really want to ask, and when the Prime Minister, member from Mico South speaks, he might want to inform the nation of what has happened to this project. It was approved from what was announced by the chairman of the CIP as a CIP approved project, and we've never heard about it since then. And I'm sure, Madam Speaker, we would love to hear about it, Madam Speaker. When it was mentioned, Madam Speaker, that a CIP was going to be introduced in St. Lucia, there were 4 sets of reaction. Those who supported it, those who are totally opposed to it, those who are more critical thinkers and believe that despite the concerns, the program was needed and could work. And there were those, the 4th set, who had real serious concerns and believed that the program could be abused by an uncaring and insensitive government. But, Madam Speaker, what were those concerns expressed by the people of St. Lucia? The first, Madam Speaker, was that the program would sell St. Lucia cheaply. It would sell St. Lucia cheaply. Second, that too many persons would become citizens and erode our sense of distinction as Lucians. Thirdly, that persons who are not high net worth would become citizens. Fourthly, that the program would become a money-making program with lack of sufficient controls over the use of the funds. Fifthly, that there will not be sufficient due diligence to ensure our security and to protect us from unworthy persons. Those were the 5 major concerns that St. Lucians expressed about the introduction of a CIP program.
Concern number 2.
Number 2, Madam Speaker, that too many persons would become citizens and erode our sense of distinction. The SLP administration, Madam Speaker, was aware of all those concerns and decided as guiding principles in reaction to what the citizens of St. Lucia were saying, that 1, we needed to have a rigid and robust program. 2, we needed to have an exclusive program. 3, there was a need for comprehensive due diligence in any program that we have. And 4, there was a need for parliamentary oversight of the program. Madam Speaker, 4 guiding principles to address the concerns of St. Lucians. The need for a rigid and robust program, a need for an exclusive program, a need for comprehensive due diligence, and 4, need for parliamentary oversight. Madam Speaker, the basis for this side asking for the changes to the regulations to be negated is because these changes which were made are leading to an erosion of the integrity and the reputation of the CIP, and those changes are posing a threat to our national security. Madam Speaker, I posit that that threat, that undermining of our reputation, that erosion of our integrity started with the actions of the Prime Minister and member for Mico South whilst in opposition. Madam Speaker, let me explain. Parliament met in July 2015 in this very chamber, and the legislation for a CIP was approved with the support of all members of the lower house. Members did express concerns with certain aspects of it, but there was substantial, and may I say unanimous agreement for the legislation. The member for Mico North, who was then leader of the opposition, praised the process that was followed, and she even recognized and acknowledged the fact that the opposition was invited to participate on the task force. And Madam Speaker, I do not need to remind you who the representative of the United Workers' Party was on the task force. I'm sure you're very familiar with the individual. His name is Mr. Nicholas John. So, Madam Speaker, the opposition was involved in the task force. And Madam Speaker, when the debate took place in this House, it was voted for and enacted. 1 month later, Madam Speaker, the member for Mico South, in a current affairs program with a gentleman, Mr. Clinton Reynolds, expressed his support for a CIP program, but he outlined problems he had with the just enacted CIP program. And listen to his concerns, Madam Speaker. And it's important to listen to his concerns because almost 15 months later, I need you to answer whether those concerns have been addressed and whether the changes that were announced are in keeping with those concerns. Firstly, the member said that the board is appointed by cabinet and can be fired by cabinet. He argued that the approach should be that the board is independent of politicians. And he went further to argue that when coming into government, he would want the CIP and he would move quickly to have the CIP operating at an OECS level, where economic citizens will be at an OECS level, and the money will be used to finance the OECS Secretariat, and the rest will be shared on an equitable basis. That's what he said to Mr. Clinton Reynolds. He also went on, Madam Speaker, and this one is equally important. He said that St. Lucians needed to know where the money will go to. And he argued that government had not put in a transparent process. Those were the big concerns of the member for Mico South. In October 2015, the CIP was launched in Monaco. The member for Mico South was in Monaco. He was in Monaco. But he did not attend the launching. His wife did. But afterwards, he was in the corridor of the hotel speaking ill of the program. And Madam Speaker, Nicole MacDonald was recently on a program with Dave Samuels. And she was making a very bizarre statement. She was saying that it looks as if this present government, all it likes to do is, the opposition is to criticize the government. They want them to fail because they want St. Lucia to fail. And she's talking about, we should not be that way. We should not be criticizing anything because St. Lucia must not fail. And that's what they're about. And I can tell you, Dave Samuels was watching her as if, come on, girl, where have you come from? Under which rock were you? Because it's a very bizarre statement to say that all of a sudden in St. Lucia, the opposition is criticizing the government, not wanting to let them do their work, and will threaten the progress of this country. Madam Speaker, the Prime Minister member for Mico South was in Monaco. He did not attend the launching. But afterwards, like I said, he was in the corridor and by the bar, Madam Speaker, and sharing his thoughts on the program to the practitioners of the industry. By December 2015, Madam Speaker, election is in the air, and the tone changes. Honorable Gail Regobert now objects to the CIP. She supported it in the House in July, but by December, she objects to it, and it gets more interesting, Madam Speaker, more interesting. She mentions the Jufali matter, and she goes on, whether the government at this time proceed. She's asking whether the government, the SLP administration, should at this time proceed with the CIP, notwithstanding some of the concerns raised by the opposition regarding the composition of the board, the need for greater participation by civil society, and the necessity to disassociate and delink the board from politics in government. That's her new position. 15 months later, Madam Speaker, what has happened? In an interview with Don Nicholas of DBS, the member for Mico South, again criticizes the CIP and focuses on the composition of the board and makes a case for the board to be independent and to comprise of civil society representatives, and says as soon as he gets into government, he will change the legislation. By December 6, 2015, the member for Mico South states that he is vehemently opposed to the CIP and that we want the government to reconstitute the board. It cannot be that Cabinet is going to appoint all the people on the board. The commission must be independent and autonomous from government. And I'm calling on the Chamber of Commerce, I'm calling on the Bar Association, I'm calling on the hotels associations, I'm calling on the churches of this country to demand that this government put Hilaire on the outside and reconstitute the board. And if we are going to sell the passports of this country, the money has to go to the people of this country. And I want you to remember that because I'm going to come back to it later on, Madam Speaker. Who is the CIP money going to? And not to the Labour government. So he's saying money that comes in through CIP should go to the people of St. Lucia. Of course, Madam Speaker, we'll describe what has happened since the government came into power and where the passport money is going to. So, Madam Speaker, the PM wanted the CIP to be an OECS initiative. He wanted it to be more transparent and accountable. He wants the board to be representative of civil society, and the money should go to the people of St. Lucia. So whilst in opposition, the then leader of the UWP, and now member for Microsoft and Prime Minister, was up and down the media, locally, regionally, and internationally, saying that the CIP program is bad. It lacks transparency. It was not conceived properly. That the board should not be appointed by government. That we should keep politics out of statutory bodies. And Madam Speaker, on that note, let's wait to see over the next few days whether chairmen of statutory boards will now become parliamentarians. Let's just wait and see. Because the principle you were saying is to keep politics out of statutory bodies. But Madam Speaker, he wanted all those things. He wanted all those things. But most importantly, Madam Speaker, he wanted the chairman, Ernest Hilaire, removed as the chair of the CIP. Madam Speaker, the Prime Minister was joined by Henley and partners in attacking the CIP in St. Lucia. Henley and partners in attacking the CIP in St. Lucia. The same Henley and partners that's in the news presently with an allegation of facilitating the sale of a diplomatic passport to a Ukrainian businessman. Of course, they denied it. But other side have come back and repeated it, and they threatened to sue. But let's see what happens. On the eve of elections, Henley launches a vicious attack on St. Lucia's CIP, Madam Speaker. And I have the article which was carried, Madam Speaker, in the Voice of St. Lucia. A gentleman called Stefan from Henley attacked the CIP in St. Lucia, saying the worst things about the CIP in St. Lucia. Now remember that, Henley and partners. Henley and partners that have just been accused last month of facilitating the sale of a diplomatic passport. Henley and partners. Then, Madam Speaker, Henley and partners followed the trail, then ranked St. Lucia second to last in the world. That's in June 2016. Second to last in the world. I'll come back to Henley and partners, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the Prime Minister and member for Mico South was very adamant that his main reason for opposing the CIP was because I was chairman of the CIP. That I was a known political operative of the SLP and likely to be a candidate. But he goes on, Madam Speaker, he goes on, that worse, I was the architect of the appointment of Wale Jufali as permanent representative to the IMO. That I gave a diplomatic passport to Jufali and his family, and I personally benefited financially in exchange, and that I was of unfit character to be the chairperson, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker, on 34-1, on the point of hallucination, I don't believe that the member has any evidence to show that I ever said that he personally benefited financially from
today, Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, those matters will be dealt in the court of law, and the Prime Minister will have a chance to respond to that. So today, Madam Speaker, I expect to hear a lot of things. To hear a lot of things about Jufali, Madam Speaker. I will say nothing, Madam Speaker, as this matter is being considered by the courts, and the Prime Minister will have his day in court to prove his words, and I will have my chance. So I'm not speaking about that today, Madam Speaker. But, Madam Speaker, suffice it to say, I've never had my integrity questioned. I've held a few prestigious jobs. I've worked in a few major capitals of the world, and I've never had my integrity and honesty questioned until Alan Chasney. And I wonder when Nicole MacDonald was when all those things were being said. But today, Madam Speaker, I want to speak about diplomatic appointments. Because, Madam Speaker, it was presented that the CIP was linked to diplomatic appointments and diplomatic passports. I need to do so, Madam Speaker, because the Prime Minister sought to convince the world that the SLP administration was issuing diplomatic passports, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I want to start with our longest serving diplomat, the permanent representative to UNESCO, who was appointed by Sir John in 1983. He was made ambassador and he was provided with a diplomatic passport as well as his staff. Should we accuse Sir John of selling diplomatic passports, Madam Speaker? Of receiving personal benefits for appointing a foreigner as an ambassador? I would never do that, Madam Speaker. I would not do that, Madam Speaker. But when the member for Mico South wanted to attack the SLP administration, that's the exact line he went down. Let's go on, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, do you remember Steven Seagal? And Madam Speaker, I know you watch a lot of television and movies, and you probably like karate movies, so you would know Steven Seagal. Do you know, Madam Speaker, that Steven Seagal was appointed as an ambassador by United Workers' Party administration and was given a diplomatic passport? Not only was he appointed as an ambassador, but he was also given a contract to perform at the St. Lucia Jazz Festival in 2007. Should we assume that someone was paid by Steven Seagal? And I know a lot more about this, but let's not go into it right now, Madam Speaker. That the person who invited Steven Seagal to perform at the Jazz Festival was paid for that favor? Should we assume that, Madam Speaker? Madam Speaker, can we ask the Prime Minister now whether he was involved in the appointment of Steven Seagal and whether he was involved as well in inviting Steven Seagal to perform at the Jazz Festival, and whether he would think it right and fair for somebody to assume that he was paid to do so? Then, Madam Speaker, we've heard so much about IMO and appointments at the IMO. We even had a former High Commissioner speak of when he used to attend meetings at the IMO and criticize the apparent non-attendance by the IMO permanent representative, Wale Jufale. Then, Madam Speaker, I learned that I was the first person to be appointed to be permanent representative to the IMO, that the said individual had never attended any meeting at the IMO. The lies and deceit which characterizes so many UWPs is not funny, Madam Speaker. And since our new High Commissioner has gone to London, almost 1 year, can you ask him how many IMO meetings has he attended? Madam Speaker, do you know there was an attempt by the UWP government to appoint a foreigner as a permanent representative to the IMO before Wale Jufale was appointed? And Madam Speaker, I want to read from a couple of documents for you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, an email was sent to the IMO with a draft letter of appointment. Madam Speaker, it's quite interesting, Madam Speaker. And the individual writes, and if you want me, I can mention the name, but I would prefer not to mention the person's name in the first instance. Nice talking to you earlier.
Member, you have mentioned quite a few names there, and if the persons are not here to defend themselves, I would ask that we avoid doing that, please.
As much as possible, Madam Speaker, but of course, I can mention names if I make the documents a document of the House. But I, like I said, we are honorable people on this side, unlike some others on the other side, Madam Speaker. But I can name it. But let's not name the names just yet, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker, on a point of order. 35-4. Madam Speaker, I have sat here, and this is about the third occasion that insulting, offensive language is being used by the member for Castro South. He referred to our government as a rogue government. He referred to members of the United Workers' Party characterized by lies and deceit. And now again, Madam Speaker is using offensive language. Section 35-4 clearly indicates that it is out of order to use offensive and insulting language in this honorable House.
That is correct, Madam.
So I'd like that you ask the honorable member to cease and desist.
Members of the Honorable House of Assembly of St. Lucia. I wish that at this juncture I would not have to do this, but I am compelled to do so. I note with concern the emergence of certain practices which may have deemed to constitute disorderly conduct in the chamber. I wish to remind honorable members, pursuant to Standing Order 40, they should maintain silence or converse briefly and only in undertones so as to avoid disturbance of the House. And I refer to Erskine May, page 450. Also, I wish to bring to members' attention also that it has become the order of the day to castigate, send insults at each other, and I wish to put you on notice, every member here, that I will not tolerate it anymore, and that I am given the authority to bring this House to order, and I will do so henceforth. Honorable Minister for Social Transformation, you are correct, and sometimes it is when I have tried this in my short tenure here, sitting here, the 14 months, I have seen it. I was approached and asked in the beginning by one member of this House, how do I intend to conduct the business of the House? Do I intend to be rigid and don't allow ping-pong? But honorable members have actually taken the ping-pong out of order, out of control. It has gotten out of control. And I wish honorable members to understand that the public at all times is watching. And it appears that it has gotten so out of control, it's a tit for tat that goes back and forth. And so now words become so very important. So I want honorable members, everyone, to adhere to the rules and order that should pertain to this honorable House. And I speak to every member. There are those who are worse than others among you, but I speak to every member when I say it has gotten out of control, and it is my duty as Speaker to bring it back to order. So, honorable members, words calling lies, liars, whatever, I do not want it to be spoken of in this honorable House as making reference to each other or to honorable members of this House. Another thing I need to remind members, you are given standing orders, and I would like members to read them and adhere to them. Standing Order 40 provides, Standing Order 45(6). No member shall refer to another member by name. I do not want anyone henceforth to refer to another member sitting around this table by name. It is sad that I have to be like a school teacher to members of society who all persons in society are supposed to be looking up to. Many persons around here, almost all, are older than I am. So I do not intend to be a schoolmaster or school teacher to anyone. But I would expect that honorable members, you are elected to an honorable House to represent the interest of this country, and you hold the highest office in the land to conduct yourselves accordingly. Have respect for one another, and that becoming of the office that you hold. And it is not just ministers. Every member here is elected by a constituency, by the people, to represent them. And so you hold the highest office of this land. And I implore you to act in accordance with that. I do not wish to remind you of that role. And it is critical. And our young people are watching. The whole world is watching. The behavior of honorable members have gotten to an all-time low in this honorable house. So, honorable member for Castries South, the honorable minister for transformation, equity, and social transformation is correct when he cites the standing order too. And you referred to members opposite as rogue government and members being what is synonymous or has become synonymous with the members of the UWP. And let us avoid that. And this is a statement that I wish you to take back, and it has been said, and I do not want persons to be pointing fingers and saying that I allow it one place and do not allow it the other. Let it stop henceforth. This is unbecoming and falling to an all-time low. Yes, please stand and proceed. But first, an apology, please.
Madam Speaker, if you ask me to apologize, the honorable member from Castries South, can you put off your mic, please?
You telling me what to do? You the speaker.
No, but I'm on the... Madam Speaker.
Honorable member for Castries South East, please turn off your mic. Now, I have honorable member for Castries South, please put off your mic. I don't think I've just asked you to apologize for the use of the words. And yes, you will do so. Am I seeing you, honorable member for Castries South, on a point of order? Castries South East, sorry.
On a point of elucidation on what you said, Madam Speaker. I'm not speaking to...
Madam Speaker, I do not have to yield on the point of elucidation.
I directed my mic, honorable member for Castries South, to him. I'll get back to you.
Madam Speaker, I do not have to yield on the point of elucidation.
Honorable member for Castries South, I am addressing honorable member for Castries South East. That is why I'm asking you to take your seat. Yes, I'm asking you, honorable member for Castries, Minister, were you standing on a point of order? Is it on a point of elucidation to what I have said?
You have said,
okay.
Speaker, not to him.
Okay, I will take that.
Madam Speaker, the reason why I need clarification on what is said here is because the member for Grozili stood up on a point of order based on the points made by the member for Castries South. And I'm sitting there listening, paying attention, and all the insults being leveled on this side. Nothing is said about it. And then we are getting a whole lecture about as if all of us did something. The member for Castries South was the one. And so I'm trying to understand, where did I go wrong in sitting there and listening to the member?
Honorable Minister for Economic Planning, I direct my answer now to you and every member of the House. And I said, I have noted and observed that it has become a practice. I will repeat my words. I have noted and I said, so I think it was an appropriate juncture for me to say what I said in regards to the decay of order in this House. That is why you got the lecture, sir. Honourable Member for Castries South.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. You asked, Madam Speaker, that I apologize and withdraw, Madam Speaker. I think the first comment which I made, and Madam Speaker, may I remind you that this morning I was called a goat by a member from the other side, Madam Speaker. But Madam Speaker, the first comment I made, which you asked me to withdraw, I shall rephrase. A government whose conduct is way off the normal parameters of normalcy. I won't call them the name which I did, but I want to suggest that the way in which they conduct themselves is beyond what is acceptable as normal. Is that acceptable, Madam Speaker? Is that acceptable? That, I have withdrawn, Madam Speaker. I withdraw the exact phrase in which I use. But I was attempting to describe...
My mic is on, thank you.
Madam Speaker.
Just in case members are not aware or do not have knowledge of it, when my mic is on, every other mic goes off. Honourable Member for Castries South, I've asked you to withdraw the use of offensive words as brought to the attention of the Chair and the House by the Honourable Minister for Social Transformation and Equity and Transformation. I recall the use of the words rogue government. I recall the use of the words members of the UWP being, I'm paraphrasing, synonymous with, but the words lies was used. So I'm asking, and I knew it would come to that because there would be back and forth of what he said, she said, and since when it started. And I should have nipped it in the bud from early o'clock. But then I am being accused of being too teacher or head teacherish. I do not have a wish to be a head teacher or headmaster or teacher to any honourable member of the House if he or she conducts himself or herself in an honourable manner, that befitting of the office which he or she holds. It is very sad and regrettable. Honourable Member for Castries South.
Madam Speaker, I was attempting to describe the government, and I described it as a government whose conduct was way beyond the acceptable parameters of normalcy. Madam Speaker, I made reference to an individual who said he had attended meetings of the IMO, which turned out not to be true. And I want to say, Madam Speaker, it's a gross deviation from reality, Madam Speaker. It's a gross deviation from reality, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, I was making the point, and I just need to get back on course, Madam Speaker, that, Madam Speaker, it cannot be wrong for me to say a gross deviation from reality.
The point you are not getting, Honourable Member,
is do not describe the government. I have apologized from the beginning, Madam Speaker. I said to you, Madam Speaker, you've asked me to withdraw the words I use, and I withdraw them. But I was attempting to describe the conduct of the government. Madam Speaker, do you want me to apologize again? Madam Speaker?
You withdraw, Honourable Member, I do not need echoes. I do not need echoes here. Honourable Member, let us make it crisp, clear, crystal clear. I just need you to withdraw, and that word is very important, and apologize. Now I just want to hear it for myself. Okay? I just you've used words that Standing Order 45, Standing Order 45-4. It shall be out of order to use offensive or insulting language about members of either chamber of Parliament. So I just want it out of the way, and then for me to watch and listen like a hawk henceforth.
Having said all of that, can you tell me exactly what you want me to do? Please, Madam Speaker. Because I have withdrawn, I have apologized. Madam Speaker, I apologize that you found the words that I used offensive, insulting to the members on the other side. Madam Speaker, I apologize for the use of the words which you found insulting and offensive, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, let's go back to the point I was making, that the member for Mico South and Prime Minister had stated clearly what his objection to the CIP were. That the board should be changed, that the monies made by CIP should go to the people of St. Lucia, and that, Madam Speaker, we should have greater transparency, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I pointed out that the Prime Minister went on to state that his greatest difficulty with the CIP board was the fact that I was chairman and that I was involved in giving passports to a gentleman and I personally benefited. And I made a point, Madam Speaker, that this is a matter before the courts. And I will not say much about it today. And both of us will have an opportunity, Madam Speaker, to deal with this matter in the courts of St. Lucia, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, I made a point that if we are going to say that the CIP and diplomatic passports are linked, I want to share a few thoughts and to give a few examples of diplomatic appointments by UWP administrations and to ask the question that if the accusations which were made by the Prime Minister is also equally associated with the UWP administration, or is it there is something that they knew, Madam Speaker, that they then accuse others of, Madam Speaker. And I gave the case of St. Lucia's longest serving diplomats, Madam Speaker, an individual who was appointed by Sir John, made an ambassador, given diplomatic immunity, had a diplomatic passport, and Madam Speaker, I asked the question, was he paid? And I said I would not go down that road, Madam Speaker. I would not do so. Then, Madam Speaker, I gave the example of Steven Seagal, who was made an ambassador, who was given a diplomatic passport, and who was invited to perform at jazz in St. Lucia, Madam Speaker. And I asked the question, was somebody paid when Steven Seagal was appointed as an ambassador? And I asked the member for Mico South to explain to the nation of St. Lucia, was he involved in the appointment of Steven Seagal? Was he involved in the invitation to Steven Seagal to perform at jazz, Madam Speaker? And I will not ask him whether he was paid or not, Madam Speaker. I will never go down that road. And then, Madam Speaker, I made a point about the IMO. And by the way, Madam Speaker, I hope all the time that was lost would be given back to me. Huh? I just hope so.
You do intend to speak for 2 hours?
Madam Speaker, the kind of mood the gentlemen, the members of the other side have put me in, I might speak for more than 2 hours, Madam Speaker. But let's proceed, Madam Speaker. Then, Madam Speaker, I spoke about the IMO. And it was one of those comments I made which offense was taken to, that an individual had said that he had attended meetings of the IMO. And it turned out to be a deviation from reality. Madam Speaker, I won't even use the word truth because I might be accused of being offensive, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, I was also making the point to you, Madam Speaker, that there was actually an attempt to appoint a foreigner by the United Workers' Party administration to the IMO. There was, and an email was sent to the IMO, and I read it, Madam Speaker. Nice talking with you earlier this week. Attached an example of the letters to be sent to you by my PM's office. Please indicate whether the wording is acceptable, and also whether coming from that office as opposed to the Foreign Affairs is still appropriate. Thanking you in advance. And the IMO responds, thank you for your email below and for the draft credentials for the appointment of a permanent representative and of a deputy permanent representative of St. Lucia to the IMO. We have no problems.
Madam Speaker, I want to know if that's a document of the House and if the copy will be made available to us.
You're standing on a point of order, Honorable Member.
Madam Speaker.
Some time ago, I passed on extract from Erskine May to members, and indicated, I actually have it highlighted, page 447, there is no rule to prevent member not connected with the government from citing documents in their possession, both public and private, which are not before the House, even though the House will not be able to form a correct judgment or from partial extracts. I will go so further to say, Honorable Member for Castries South, if you are reading documents, I have ruled that you are to make those documents available to every member. And if you are not going to do so, I wish you to do so immediately so that members can have sight of what it is you're reading from.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I shall make them documents of the House. As I was saying, Madam Speaker, I will continue reading from the document. We have no problems if the credentials are signed by the Prime Minister and not the Minister of Foreign Affairs. However, kindly note that the term Goodwill Ambassador is not used in the IMO. May we assume that Lady Anne would, mention the name because it will now be made a document of the House, would be appointed with the rank of ambassador. In this case, she would be listed as Her Excellency, blah, 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 blah. I hereby attach your drafts, which I have amended to reflect our practice. I hope you find these helpful. And it goes on. Also, will you be based in St. Lucia? If so, we will need contact details, addresses, telephone numbers, blah, 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 for both of you to communicate to the United Kingdom Foreign Office and to include in our list of permanent representatives, blah, blah, blah. And the person responds, thanks for your help. We will be based in the UK. And she says many times, kindly note that we still need a clarification regarding the correct title to be used for Her Excellency Lady Anne Glencorner, and contact details for both of you. Madam Speaker, clearly an attempt, Madam Speaker, to appoint a foreigner as the permanent representative to the IMO. But the appointment never went through, Madam Speaker. And I want to ask whether members on the other side probably can share with us whether it's because one of the two persons for permanent rep and deputy permanent rep had a criminal record. And that's why the appointment did not go through. So, Madam Speaker, so when one is speaking, Madam Speaker, about attempts to appoint foreigners, when people are pretending that persons who are appointed for the first time in diplomatic positions and as ambassadors, Madam Speaker, that there was something surreptitious about it, Madam Speaker, should we assume, Madam Speaker, that someone was paid to propose these appointments, Madam Speaker? Should we, Madam Speaker? Madam Speaker, I will go further. During my term as High Commissioner, a gentleman approached me indicating that he had been appointed by the UWP administration to open a separate office in London with full diplomatic status to secure business opportunities. He presented me with his letters of appointment, and I want to read from them. And I will make it you wanted a document of the House? Well, Madam Speaker, can I proceed? Madam Speaker, the photocopying is a bit slow because I'm going to give it a bit late, so can I proceed? Madam Speaker, it will still be read, Honourable Member.
Fine. But Madam Speaker, going by your own rulings in the past, Madam Speaker, on this issue,
Wait. Honourable Member, either you refer to something else and come back to that point, but can you have the Sarge, take the document.
Will be made, and for practical purposes, can we proceed? Copies will be made, and every member will have a copy in hand.
Practical purposes, let us all read through it one
Let us
time.
all do?
Those were my ruling at an earlier sitting. Those were my rulings, so I will abide by them. Honorable Prime Minister.
So, Madam Speaker.
Bear with me, please. Honorable Prime Minister, can we rise for 5 minutes, please? Can we rise for 5 minutes, please? 5 minutes.
Madam Speaker, can I ask for a suspension of the House for 10 minutes?
Honorable members, the question is that the House to rise for 10 minutes. As many as of that opinion say aye. As many as of a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. This House is suspended for 10 minutes. We return at 4:40.
Interpretation of Erskine Mays is that the opposition is required to make copies of documents as well as ministers. Because I thought when this matter was first came up and you distributed a photocopy of Erskine Mays, what it suggested was that the opposition is not obliged to make copies, but ministers of government are obliged. Are you saying the interpretation is that both sides are required to make copies?
For the benefit of the newer members of Parliament, the Madam Clerk informs me that this is a matter that has been almost exhausted. The older members will recall there was a situation where there was a parliamentary session, and Ms. Jackie Simpson from the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago was here and spoke at length regarding that. It appears that the practice in St. Lucia regarding making documents of the House, we have been for quite a while now, I'm talking about successive legislatures, parliaments, have adopted the wrong practice. It is one of the things that I do intend to address. But members, before we can withdraw that which members are accustomed to, before we can withdraw it, I need to give members a chance to understand it. So we need to go over the procedure. What I want members to understand is when they are making reference to documents, whether it's citation, because members have used that term loosely as making documents of the House, which ought not to be, and through no fault of some members. It has been used for so long and loosely and in the wrong manner that I think I owe it to members, honorable members, the time to explain to you privately how we ought to proceed and give you the reasonings and the authority as to how it's supposed to be done properly. Until such time, we have to continue the practice of what members know, so that members are not negatively affected by it. So what I ask is that members, whenever they are citing documents, to make copies available so everybody have sight of the documents that they are reading from, and it applies to both sides of the chamber. Is that understood, honourable member?
Yes, Madam Speaker. Let's proceed. So, Madam Speaker, no, but we changed that one. I'm going to put let's open the votes.
Even, honorable members, even if you speak above the noise, which is quite disturbing, chances are the recording is disrupted. So we need it for Hansard, and we need the issue rectified. So can we call the technicians to see what is going on, please? Something is obviously wrong.
So, Madam Speaker, when we broke, I was making the point, Madam Speaker, that just before the last general elections, in the critique of the CIP, Madam Speaker, the member for Miku South, and now Prime Minister, went to great lengths in the media, locally, regionally, and internationally, criticizing the CIP. He made a number of specific criticisms, and I recall 3 of them, Madam Speaker: that monies made must go to the people of St. Lucia, that the board must be reconstituted, and Madam Speaker, he had a problem with diplomatic passports and appointments, whatnot. And Madam Speaker, I took you on the Honorable House through the appointments of a number of persons. Our Ambassador, Permanent Representative to UNESCO, Ambassador Steven Seagal. I made mention, Madam Speaker, of the appointment of the attempted appointment of 2 persons to the IMO, Madam Speaker. And I was at a point, Madam Speaker, where I was saying during my tenure as High Commissioner, a gentleman came to me indicating that he had been appointed and given permission to open separate offices in London with full diplomatic status to secure business opportunities. And Madam Speaker, he shared with me his letters of appointments, Madam Speaker. So I want to read from them, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, as soon as I will circulate it. So I have to circulate it before I read from it. So you're the Speaker of the House now, Honorable Member. Okay. Do I wait until you receive it and you read it before I continue, Madam Speaker? You can give out all of them. Yeah. So, Madam Speaker, I had referred earlier, so let me just repeat whilst it's being circulated, Madam. The appointment of Ambassador Steven Seagal. How many St. Lucians knew that this famous Hollywood actor, whilst he was starring in many movies, was in fact Ambassador Seagal? He was an ambassador of St. Lucia, and he had a diplomatic passport. And Madam Speaker, I was at Pigeon Point when he actually performed at jazz. I never knew he was such an acclaimed jazz musician, Madam Speaker. And I wonder who had made those arrangements. How did he come to be Ambassador Seagal? How did he come to perform at jazz, Madam Speaker? How did he come to have a diplomatic passport from St. Lucia? But Madam Speaker, I will never accuse anyone of having been paid for such a favor granted to the individual, Madam Speaker. I would never do so. Madam Speaker, I made mention of our permanent rep to UNESCO. And I was making the point, Madam Speaker, he's our longest serving ambassador. He was appointed by Sir John. Would it be right to accuse Sir John of wrongdoings, Madam Speaker? Madam Speaker, he was given that for sure, Madam Speaker. He was, yes. Yes. Madam Speaker, I made mention of the appointment at the IMO, that there was actually an attempt to appoint a foreign lady to be our permanent rep and a St. Lucian living in the UK to be our deputy permanent rep. But for some reason the appointments did not go through anymore. Somebody said to me, Madam Speaker, and I don't have a document to share, that it probably has to do with the records of the individual, of one of the individuals, Madam Speaker. Did St. Lucians know that, Madam Speaker? Was that associated with the CIP, Madam Speaker? It wasn't, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, all this leads to a clear clear scenario. And Madam Speaker, I really wish I could continue, Madam Speaker, with my presentation. So this gentleman came to me, Madam Speaker, and said to me that he had been appointed. And he gave me his letters of appointment. One from the then Minister of Foreign Affairs, Madam Speaker, and from the other was a letter, Madam Speaker, from the Cabinet Secretary of the time to the PS, Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I wouldn't read from it because members would say they do not yet have copies. I'll come back and read from it, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, these are all examples of the United Workers' Party appointing foreigners as ambassadors and providing diplomatic immunity, and yet never a claim that anyone was involved in any wrongdoing. But Madam Speaker, you may say that these happen. When these happened, the Prime Minister and Minister of Mico South was just a minister in cabinet and cannot be totally held responsible. Then if that is the case, Madam Speaker, will the Prime Minister inform the people of St. Lucia of how many diplomatic passports has he or his government authorized since becoming Prime Minister? Can he tell us, and he will have a chance to speak, how many diplomatic passports has he issued or his government authorized, Madam Speaker? And Madam Speaker, can he explain to the nation who is the person that he has appointed as an ambassador, provided the person with a diplomatic passport, and attempts were made to get the United States to provide diplomatic immunity for that person? And Madam Speaker, can he tell us whether the United States has provided such immunity? Because the United States, from the record, asked, why am I supposed to provide diplomatic immunity to that individual? What role is he going to perform in the United States? Madam Speaker, the member for Mico South was very vocal in accusing the SLP of not publicizing diplomatic appointments, even when they were publicized, and suggesting that there were sinister reasons for these appointments. But today, Madam Speaker, guess who is making the appointments in secret? And Madam Speaker, the documents will be circulated. I'm not even reading from them. But if you want me to read from them, Madam Speaker, I can read from them. So, Madam Speaker, I am not suggesting that making diplomatic appointments and appointing ambassadors is something that is necessarily wrong, Madam Speaker. Many small island states like ours, Madam Speaker, appoint foreigners as ambassadors. We make diplomatic appointments. It's called commercial diplomacy, Madam Speaker. I'm sure the member from Mico North, who has some knowledge of international relations, will attest to that. And the former foreign minister will tell you. So it's not unusual. But the Prime Minister and member for Mico South attempted to use a particular situation facing our country to tarnish the CIP, to denigrate the CIP, Madam Speaker. But Madam Speaker, remember I told you about Henley and all the things Henley said together with the Prime Minister about St. Lucia CIP? Would you believe that by November 2016, 5 months, Madam Speaker, after, Madam Speaker, the appointment, after the elections, St. Lucia is now ranked number 2 in the world. It moved from second last to be ranked in the top 5 in the world. 5 months after, nothing has happened to the program, except the person who was the biggest critic of the program, supported by Henley, is now Prime Minister, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I'll tell you what really happened. Shortly after, Madam Speaker, Henley announces that it is opening an office in St. Lucia. The same Henley that was critical of St. Lucia's CIP, the same Henley that is now being accused in the media of facilitating the sale of a diplomatic passport, announced that they were opening an office in St. Lucia. And guess who, Madam Speaker, heads the Henley and Partners office in St. Lucia? A particular local lawyer who also happens to be the Prime Minister's personal lawyer. And I know he's his lawyer because he's representing him in the defamation case which I filed against him. The same person who's the Prime Minister's lawyer is heading the Henley's office in St. Lucia. And Madam Speaker, you have a copy of the statement from Henley, so you can verify for yourself that that person was announced by Henley as the head of the Henley office in St. Lucia. So before elections, Henley was critical, was all over the world desecrating St. Lucia CIP, supported by the Prime Minister, and within 2-3 months of elections, St. Lucia is now moved from second last in the world to the top 5, and then Henley announces the opening of an office in St. Lucia to be headed by the Prime Minister's lawyer. Madam Speaker, you see where the CIP, where the source of the undermining of the St. Lucia CIP started, Madam Speaker. But Madam Speaker, there were conferences organized in Dubai and the Far East, and St. Lucia CIP was invited to address. But the Prime Minister did not join his CEO or the chairman to address those conferences. You know what he does? He goes to the Henley's conference in London and addresses it. Now people wondering, why is the Prime Minister of St. Lucia addressing the Henley's conference? Because St. Lucia has no relationship with Henley. Little did we know that Henley was about to open an office in St. Lucia and there were going to be dramatic changes to our CIP. So the Prime Minister addresses Henley in London, although St. Lucia has no relationship with Henley, and the conferences where we have relationships, he does not address it. The Prime Minister sits with PM Brown of Antigua and Barbuda, and he agrees on the need to harmonize our positions on CIP and avoid a race to the bottom. The PM goes further, and he virtually quotes the speech which was delivered by the Prime Minister in Monaco, the former Prime Minister. And he says, we're not selling passports, we're selling a lifestyle. St. Lucia is premium. St. Lucia is an exclusive program. He says that in London. But he then returns to St. Lucia and announces that donation levels will be reduced to $1,000 US for a single applicant. 100,000. A total turnaround, Madam Speaker, from what he had addressed in London and said in London to what he then announced in St. Lucia. So, Madam Speaker, let us examine the views of the Prime Minister and what has happened since, and examine how the integrity and reputation has been further undermined. Madam Speaker, has the Prime Minister, since becoming Prime Minister, has he made the CIP any more transparent? No, he has not. He has eroded any semblance of transparency that existed in the CIP. Let me give you one major example, Madam Speaker. And you recall I said that people had concerns about the CIP. They wanted to know that the CIP would be well managed, that the people who became citizens would be persons of worthy character, that they wanted to know that the money is being made was being spent properly. And the Prime Minister himself said in his major critique of the CIP that the money belongs to the people of St. Lucia and not the government. Madam Speaker, the legislation of the CIP provides for a report to be submitted to this Honorable House at the latest September of each year. There was no report for the ending of September 2016, and September ends in 2 weeks' time, and there is no report before us at this meeting of the House. So we would have gone 2 years, or at least 2 dates, where the minister was supposed to submit to this House a report on the CIP, a report that said how many people applied, who was granted citizenship, who these people are, which countries they are from, as well as submitting audited financial statements as to how much money was earned and what those monies have been used for. Further, Madam Speaker, the legislation says that when donations are made to the CIP, they have to be transferred to the National Economic Fund. And Parliament has to receive a report as to how those monies have been spent and approve the projections for the next financial year. Madam Speaker, we have never done this in this Honorable House. The very transparency that the member for Miku South spoke about has been violated. Is that offensive language, Madam Speaker? Madam Speaker, can you guide me, by the way? If somebody says something that's not true, how do I describe it in the House? So I cannot say it was a lie.
Economic with the truth.
Economic with the truth. So, Madam Speaker, the member for Mico South, he said those things. He said he would do it immediately. And to date, he's had 2 opportunities to submit a report, Madam Speaker, to this Honorable House, and it has not been done. And Madam Speaker, I want to ask you as presiding officer, is it your responsibility to ask that such a report be submitted to this House? Because the CIP is a critical program in this country. And Madam Speaker, this is a rhetorical question, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, we expect reports to be submitted in this House for 2016 and for 2017 that says how many people became new citizens of St. Lucia, where are they from, and Madam Speaker, we need to know how much money has been earned and what those monies have been used for, Madam Speaker. That is what the legislation says has to be done, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, the Prime Minister stood up some time ago in this House, Madam Speaker, and announced that 3 persons had failed due diligence, but 2 had been overturned or something like that, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we need details on that. Because if somebody had failed due diligence, we'd love to know under what circumstances it was overturned and how it is they've now become citizens of St. Lucia. But the Prime Minister will get a chance to speak, so he will deal with those matters. Madam Speaker, has the Prime Minister and member for Mico South appointed a board which represents civil society? No, Madam Speaker. In fact, he has instituted a principle of political appointment. A principle of political appointment to the CIP. And Madam Speaker, sometimes when major corporations have vacancies for executive directors and general managers, it's advertised. I think it was advertised for Invest St. Lucia, and a new person has been announced. But we had a CEO of the CIP. We were told she was sent on administrative leave. Now, when you send somebody on administrative leave, you're making a major statement. You're saying that person is believed to have done something wrong and is facing an investigation. And the next thing we hear, there's a new CEO at CIP. We never heard she had been terminated. We never heard the job had been advertised. Now, I'm not criticizing the person who got the job. But, Madam Speaker, if the Prime Minister, when he was in opposition, said he wanted greater transparency in the management of the CIP, he has failed to exercise that precise point he said. Madam Speaker, millions of dollars is being earned through the CIP, and no one knows where the money is going or what it is being used for. The Prime Minister said one of his principal criticisms was that the money must go to the people of St. Lucia and not to the Labour Party government. But yet millions have been earned, and St. Lucians have never been told the exact amount and what the monies have been used for. Madam Speaker, the legislation is clear. That report must be submitted to Parliament, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, on January 5th, the government announced changes to the regulations. And it is these changes that we are asking the Honourable House to reinstate. The amendment of Schedule 2. Madam Speaker, the CIP was positioned as a high-valued option for persons who want to be part of a select few. This amendment, together with the other changes, made St. Lucia a cheap island paradise. In fact, when the changes were made, it was said that we're now cheaper than Dominica. That's how it was portrayed. Gone our argument that St. Lucia is a selected place, and that because of the price, not just about anybody can apply and become a citizen of St. Lucia. That was changed, Madam Speaker. We've cheapened St. Lucia. We've placed at the bottom of the barrel. Madam Speaker, Amendment of Regulation 9. Madam Speaker, and I need you to focus on that change which was introduced by the government. It adds that the board of the CIP to retain 20% of each monetary contribution made to the National Economic Fund for marketing and promotion. That's what the regulation changes says. Yet when the Prime Minister spoke, he had said it's for operational purposes. But I will go by what the SI said. 20% retained for marketing and promotion. So, Madam Speaker, if the donation is now 100,000 K, and 20% is retained for marketing and promotion, it means the state gets 80,000K. 80,000K. Now, we did not get the details, because when I asked the question in the House, the Prime Minister said, no, it's not market and promotion, it's for operational purposes. Now, I know marketing agents are getting 10%. Recently, the CIP announced that all authorized agents will get 10%. Now, something's wrong with that, Madam Speaker. Is it 20% retained for operational purposes, 10% for the marketing companies, and 10% for the authorized agents? But that means 40% of 100,000K is gone. But I want to believe the Prime Minister had misled us when he said that the 20% is for operational purposes. I suspect he meant it's the same marketing and promotion. Because to now reduce our price to 100,000K and 40,000K goes off and only 60,000K remains is, I must admit, unbelievable, Madam Speaker. So we've reduced it to 80,000, and at best, we reduce it to 100,000K, and at best, only 80,000K can go to the National Economic Fund, because 20% is being retained. Now, no, it's not part of the operation, because you earn monies. When every applicant submits an application, he pays an administrative fee. He pays an administration fee. He pays a due diligence fee. And therefore, those fees were supposed to take care of the operations of the unit. So if you're going to keep 20% for operational purposes, we need to see the report in the House for us to understand how it is you're keeping 20% for operational purposes, assuming that's what it is, plus the due diligence fees is paid, plus the administrative fee is paid for each applicant. Madam Speaker, the only way those questions can be answered is if a report is submitted to this Honorable House. But Madam Speaker, think about it. Just do the arithmetic challenge for me, Madam Speaker. If you want to pay authorized agents 10% incentives as an incentive, your fee was $200,000, $200,000. And you pay 10% of that to an authorized agent. He's earning $20,000. He's earning $20,000. So he has an incentive to send the applicant to St. Lucia, because for every 200,000, he gets 10%, which is 20,000K. We reduce it to 100,000K, and we give them $10,000, 10% commission, and we say we're providing more incentive for them. How can 10,000 incentive be more than 20,000 incentive? And if you had to retain 20% for marketing and promotion, 20%, Madam Speaker, of 200,000K is 40,000. The country would be left with 160,000. But when you reduce it to $100,000 and you take away 20%, you're reducing it to $60,000. So on one hand, yeah, Honorable, I can go over it again. If you have 200,000, if you have 200,000 and you take away 10% incentive, if I'm paying you 10% incentive on 200,000, you'll get 20,000. If you reduce it to 100,000 and you give me 10% incentive, I'll get 10,000. Which one provides more incentive for me, the 20,000 or the 10,000? That's one. The second point, if you're selling at 200,000K and assume you take the 20% as stated in the SI, it means 20% of 200,000 is 40,000. The country will get 160,000. But if you reduce it to 100,000 and you take away 20%, it means the country is left with 80,000. 80,000 as against 160,000. It means now we have to at least sell 2 citizenships to make up for the one we had before, to equal the one we had before. Is that challenging, members, to understand? So maybe the Honorable Member for Microsoft can explain to us, and maybe the member for Castle South East, because he seems to have all the answers for that riddle, to explain to us how is it more attractive for us to sell at a cheaper price. Madam Speaker, Regulation 73A was put in, Madam Speaker, to ensure that only persons of high net worth qualified to be citizens of St. Lucia. Only persons of high net worth. This provision, Madam Speaker, required an applicant to declare his net worth of at least $3 million US. Now remember at the beginning, I stated what the concerns of St. Lucians were. One of the concerns of St. Lucians is that they only wanted high net worth individuals to become new citizens. But if you remove that regulation, Madam Speaker, where each applicant have to prove that he is worth at least $3 million US, what you are saying is, I'm not interested in your worth. You do not need to be a high net worth individual to become a new citizen of St. Lucia. And when you couple it with reducing the price to 100,000 K, you say to somebody, you don't need to have worth, and once you have 100,000 K, you can qualify to be a citizen of St. Lucia. So all the safeguards that were in the previous arrangements, Madam Speaker, were removed, and we're asking that they be brought back in, because this is undermining the integrity of St. Lucia, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, this program, because of the changes in the restriction on the net worth and the value of the donation, no longer attracts high net worth individuals to St. Lucia. St. Lucia has become a cow that can be milked by any person with $100,000, Madam Speaker. Regulation 7.9, Madam Speaker, the restriction of 500 applications annually, Madam Speaker, was designed to make the program exclusive. If you restrict the number of persons allowed into the program, then you reduce the possibility of unworthy persons that would become citizens of your country. So let's go over the three again. You must declare your high net worth of at least $3 million. Your donation level is $200,000, and only 500 allowed each year, Madam Speaker. All designed, Madam Speaker, to ensure that our program, Madam Speaker, is robust, our program is exclusive, and our program sells St. Lucia as a desired location. Madam Speaker, we also sought to introduce the most rigid due diligence process. We studied what the other islands were doing, Madam Speaker, where they were faltering, and we decided we had to have a more robust due diligence than ever before. That persons had to go through the regular due diligence. They had to go through policing due diligence, Madam Speaker. And then, Madam Speaker, you read in the DSH agreement a commitment being made to DSH that their applicants that they bring into this country will be approved no more than 45 days, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, I cannot present the document to this House. We know the history of that document, Madam Speaker. Undermining the due diligence that we had established in the program. And the Prime Minister announced, and I'm going back to it, that there were at least 3 persons who had failed, but I think 2 had been overturned. Under what conditions, Madam Speaker? To explain that to us. Who are those people, and under what conditions they were overturned? So, Madam Speaker, there is no doubt that the integrity and the reputation of the CIP has been severely undermined by the actions of the government. There were 3 fundamental provisions, as I said: high net worth, 500 annually, and a high donation level, which sought to ring-fence the threat to our security and to preserve our image. But according to today's thinking in government, our integrity, our reputation, our security is determined by our credit rating. Madam Speaker, I will state to you 10 reasons why the changes must be reinstated. 10 reasons. 1, the program is no longer restricted to a select few and no longer seen as exclusive and very discriminating. It's no longer seen as that way. We are seen as a cheap option. We have little value. Third, it suggests that since we are primarily concerned with making money, then the emphasis on worthy individuals is lessened. Number 4, the removal of Regulation 7.3b means that you are no longer required to provide supporting documents of your wealth. 5, the perception in the industry is that it is easy to apply and get approved in the St. Lucia CIP because it is heavily politicized. You just need to speak to certain people and you will get approved. 6, the government refuses to submit reports on the performance of the CIP. We do not know who are the people that have become citizens of St. Lucia, how much money has been earned, and where is that money going. 7, and I want to repeat it, Madam Speaker, that we need to know who are the people that have become citizens? I need to ask the Prime Minister. There's a lot been said about Jack Lam, Madam Speaker. Did he apply to be a citizen of St. Lucia? And has he been approved to be a citizen of St. Lucia, Madam Speaker? And the Minister of Citizenship and Investment is in a very good position to present to the nation of St. Lucia whether, in fact, that individual has been granted citizenship in St. Lucia. 8, Madam Speaker. In the budget, Madam Speaker, presented earlier this year, about $43.6 million was stated as revenue from CIP. Madam Speaker, we need to know what that money is going to be used for. And we have to be told. Madam Speaker, can the Prime Minister tell us what is being done with the 20% being kept by the board? Madam Speaker, what is meant by operational expenses? And I'm sure he can give us a very good explanation. Finally, and very importantly, Madam Speaker, we are seen in the industry as having less restrictions and therefore open for all. For the sake of our security, we need to restrict the persons who can become citizens. This is a high-risk program. Madam Speaker, we need to know and send out clear signals as to who can become citizens of St. Lucia. Under what conditions, Madam Speaker? Madam Speaker, we are seen as having dropped the level of due diligence we had. And Madam Speaker, on that note, I have heard, Madam Speaker, and the Honourable Minister and other relevant ministers can answer, that the Canals project has been approved as a project in St. Lucia. I recall, Madam Speaker, when I was chairman of CIP, that the Canals project had failed due diligence. And if they had failed due diligence, how can they now be approved as a project, Madam Speaker? How can the Cabinet approve a project when they failed due diligence? And the level of due diligence I know they had failed was basic due diligence. It was not even in-depth due diligence, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, there's a lot going on. A lot going on, Madam Speaker. Because in another jurisdiction in this country, it is said that there were a batch of applicants, and I need the Minister to clarify that, a batch of applicants by a developer, and he wanted to shift it to St. Lucia. And the banks in that jurisdiction had sent clear signals that they're not accepting monies from Iran and Syria. And therefore, since those applicants were from Iran and Syria, they would have difficulty in the monies coming to St. Lucia, coming to that jurisdiction. And it is said that the monies will go to, the applications will go to St. Lucia. And we need to know and to be assured by the Prime Minister that there will not be any attempt to allow persons that cannot be approved in other jurisdictions to come to St. Lucia. Because, Madam Speaker, the talk is, and I'll tell you, and it will come up later, and certainly in my rebuttal I'll provide more information on it, that persons are now learning that if the local banks are not accepting the monies, they can open an account in Dubai and make the monies be deposited in Dubai, and then they will find a way for it to come to St. Lucia. And we need to know whether St. Lucia government has opened an account in Dubai to receive monies that will be problematic to come to St. Lucia, Madam Speaker. The Honourable Member for Miku South and Prime Minister can provide us clarity on whether or not there's any intention to open an account in Dubai, whether one has been opened, and whether we are accepting applicants from Iran and Syria. Because, Madam Speaker, only last month it was announced that the US government, listen to this, had charged IPSA. IPSA is a firm that does due diligence for the CIP program. It does due diligence for CIP in St. Lucia. And the US government fined IPSA for breaking the sanctions against Iran because IPSA had used local contractors in Iran and Syria to do due diligence for them. IPSA worked for our CIP. Are we accepting applicants from Iran and Syria to St. Lucia? And if they are, our local bank who's accepting, there's only one bank in St. Lucia accepting CIP monies right now. One. Bank of St. Lucia. And whether or not the fear of corresponding banks do not accept money from Iranians and Syria, are we circumventing it by opening an account elsewhere, and whether that has been authorized? Madam Speaker, I want all members seated here to reflect on what has happened to the CIP. The CIP was designed and built as a program with immense admiration from other countries because simply we had learned from them and we had ring-fenced our program. That reputation has been shattered by the actions of the Prime Minister and members on the opposite side. The changes which were instituted, Madam Speaker, must be reinstated, and to send some clear signals to the international community that we are serious about our CIP program, and that, Madam Speaker, it is a program that one should wish to be part of. It is well managed. It has the highest level of due diligence, Madam Speaker. And I ask honorable members to so consider, and I so move. Thank you very much.